I am Sam Otten, and with me is Jason Book, writer and artist of the Me and Him webcomic, which is available at meandhimcomic.tumblr.com. Hey Jason, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, Sam. How are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm excited here to be covering another issue of Batman, the ongoing series by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. This is Batman issue 48, which is part 8 of the Super Heavy storyline, which is the one that follows up on all the Endgame stuff. We're 8 issues into it. It's been featuring Mr. Bloom. The last issue left us off with Gordon having caught Mr. Bloom, but then right at the end, Mr. Bloom breaks out with the help of a bunch of other Mr. Blooms, apparently. And we also had Duke and Bruce, and Duke is kind of like trying to move Bruce back into picking up the Batman mantle. And we see Bruce sitting down at his bench with what looks like the Joker. So that brings us into 48. So in 48, we moved some stuff forward in some pretty big ways. So what did you make of the issue overall?
Oh, Sam, once again, just an excellent job by Snyder and Capullo. Just an aside here, I think we should officially start the petition to get DC to get these two guys to work on Superman. I would
Mm,
love to see what they would do with it because after I read this issue, I was sitting there thinking, man, I can't remember a Batman run that was this good from issue 1 to issue 48.
yeah,
48 issues
it's
of just
amazing.
great storytelling, you know? So,
Yeah.
anyways, it was nice. Like the book started out with something small, which was Batman and the Joker, pretty
Hmm.
much sitting on
Yeah.
a bench talking about feeding ducks and stuff like that. But there was so much more going on underneath it. And there's
Hmm.
these crazy moments where he pulled out a gun, you didn't know what was going to happen. And then that mixed with all the kind of insane stuff happening with these giant Mr. Blooms walking around the city, with what looks like Commissioner Gordon maybe biting the dust, but probably not.
Hmm.
Just an excellent job. And then we get to the end, and I won't get to it yet, but the last page, I was like, man, I was pumped. I really
Hmm.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, they definitely built. I mean, now if we go back and look at several issues and then leading into this one, they've been building to that last page for a while now.
Mm.
Um, but you're right about the beginning. So I really enjoyed the Joker scene with Bruce at the beginning. And even though it's just two guys talking at a bench, there was a lot of tension and drama in that scene.
Yeah,
And I really, when I was reading it, I'm like, man, I do not know what the Joker's going to do because
totally,
I
right?
don't know what his
Yeah.
mindset is. I don't know if he's all there. If he, I don't know his state. He definitely seems to be there, and he's almost like playing a game with Bruce.
Hmm.
But yeah, as it was going from page to page, I did not know what was going to happen next with that one, and it was kind of fun to read
Yeah.
and to see Bruce's reactions to the Joker. He'd like overreact, then he'd pull back, and then he would like kind of react again.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a well done scene. The huge giant blooms going in the city, and in this issue now we get kind of the full Bloom monologue of kind
Mm.
of like what he's doing and why he's doing it, and kind of in a poetic way he's sort of saying his motivations. I had some issues with the Bloom monologue, the actual dialogue itself, but I liked the art. I liked the visuals of these lanky figures kind of coming through the city. And it didn't look like anything that I've ever remember seeing before. Like the images were pretty unique.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I find that like with this, obviously we're going to get something major, revelation who this character is and what the whole
Hmm.
deal is. But it's almost like they're making something larger than life for Batman to come back and have to take down.
Hmm.
And so, in that respect, it's obviously doing the job it's set out to do. But
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to, as usual with these guys, there's going to be something more underneath for sure.
Hmm. I do need to tip my hat though to the writing for it.
Mm,
For Bloom, like you said, is this big thing that's gonna pull Bruce back into the bat suit. But before that, it was kind of this meta textual writing of the Joker saying like, even if we enjoy things right now and even if we're happy, we're going to be pulled back into our roles as like Batman and the Joker.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which it's like they're saying that in the story, but they're also kind of saying it about comic books,
Yeah.
where like even if you get pulled away into something, it's only a matter of time because it's a comic book and it's Batman, and so at some point Bruce Wayne is going to be Batman again. It's like inevitable because DC is a business and all this stuff. Now I gave my acknowledgement for the good writing there. I didn't love Bloom's monologue overall. I thought he kind of mixed metaphors, or it was a little bit rambling at points. And what I mean by that was like he starts by saying that this is a garden, but gardens aren't beautiful and pretty. Gardens are very violent. It's these things that have been thrown together that are not meant to be together. and they're being maintained by these forces, and it's actually very violent. They're fighting for resources and stuff. So I'm like, okay, the city is a garden, but it's, even if it's supposed to look pretty on the surface, underneath it's actually a violent place. But then later he switches the metaphor to say, and he actually explicitly says, this isn't a garden, it's a bloody meadow. I'm like, well, wait a minute, you're trying to say it's not a garden like a garden's peaceful, it's a bloody meadow, which is like violent. But before you had said a garden is violent. So it's like he like, to me, it's kind of contradictory, which maybe is part of the character. But then later it was like a mixed metaphor again, because then at the end he says like, we need to let this die so that something else can grow in its place. And so I'm like, oh wait, so now it's like a metaphor of actually like turning over the soil. So I feel like he was kind of rambling through three different metaphors. They were all plant metaphors, but they weren't consistent. But maybe that's because he's a little unhinged as a character. Maybe it's not bad writing. To me, I couldn't avoid the connections to like current political things as well, where the Bloom is kind of encouraging people to like let their hate out and let their rivalries, and like he even mentions immigrants and police brutality and stuff. And so to me, it was kind of like in the United States, we're going through election season where there's some people are sort of like playing up people's fears of each other, or playing up sort of us versus them type thinking. And to me, that's almost what Bloom was trying to do as well, but in a very explicit way of like, take these pills and actually go at each other. So overall, really good stuff. And I liked that the super heavy elements came back in at the beginning and the end, about how, because that was one thing where I'm like, wait, is that part of this story or not? Because it feels like it hasn't been there all the time. So I was glad to see it coming back. It's like, okay, they are generating these super heavy elements, and that seems like it's now going to be part of the next issue. And the bat suits, you know, that they said, oh, we've created all these bat suits, and now they're coming in to try to take down the Bloom. So everything that they've put in place, I wasn't sure if they were keeping them all up in the air, but now it's all definitely working out for issue 49. And we have Greg Capullo for a couple more issues, so that'll be good to see him doing that. And I also want to see what happens with Alfred in those issues. So he's not going to be part of the action, but he's going to emotionally be a big part of the story, because they really built to this moment. So now the last page, so spoiler alert here, but Bruce is pounding on this door, and Alfred knows, like, oh, this is the moment that Alfred's been fearing, which is Bruce wanting to return to Batman. And Alfred doesn't really say anything, but there's so much emotion, and Greg Capullo captured it, and Scott Snyder set it up for Alfred just to be kind of weeping that, like, oh no, Bruce is going back to this. He's needed, but it's such a painful road to be Batman. It also could be a master class on Greg Capullo's kind of layouts and framing, because he knows right when to go in for the close-ups to pull back, and he knows right when to frame an object, when to frame a face. It's just every time it's like, wow, he knows how to play the ebbs and flows of those scenes. Cool. All right. Well, so 49, maybe a little bit of an interlude, and then the big stuff in 50 coming up. So there we have it. And that'll be about the time that Batman v Superman's hitting theaters too. So